My name is Agnès Calama. I am the United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial, summary or arbitrary killings. And I am particularly interested in monitoring the extent to which the state is respecting the right to life of their citizens. And that means focusing heavily on the use of force by police or other security forces and the use of lethal force. So I came here invited by human rights defenders, NGOs, experts who have been alarmed by the rate of killings by the police of specific target group, it looks like, young men, particularly those living in urban settlement in very poor condition. As I have explained to them in my work for the last 3 years, I have found that around the world there is a common trend which consists in a war waged by the state against the poor and a war waged by the state against the youth. I have found that in the Philippines, I have found it in Nigeria, I have found it in Venezuela. The war is being waged in the name of the fight against crime, the fight against drugs, or the fight against terrorism. And the victims are often young men, some of whom may indeed engage in criminal activities, many are not. They are just caught in this very big net consisting in criminalizing a certain population. It seems to me that the trends and the dynamics in Kenya are unfortunately very much along the lines of what I have just described to you. In the poorest neighborhood of Nairobi and in other places of Kenya, young men have been killed in total impunity by individuals associated with the security forces. In many cases, the investigation into those killings have never taken place or are stalled. In many cases that have been reported to me, the police itself has interfered with the conduct of an effective investigation, making it almost impossible for the independent monitoring body, which is IPOA, to conduct an investigation into the misbehavior of security officials. So there are many concerns here. One, of course, is the arbitrary killings, the extrajudicial killings, and the burden, the loss that this is creating for the families, for the community, those young lives that are stopped short of their potential. So that's one big concern. The second is the fact that investigations are not carried out, or very few of them are carried out, and that there seems to be a policy to prevent investigation on the part of at least certain police officers who will act in the crime scene itself in order to make it difficult for IPOA investigators to proceed with their investigation. So that's a very large concern because the effective investigation is an obligation placed upon the government, and the failure to investigate constitutes an independent violation of the right to life. And therefore, the third big concern is impunity, is a regime of impunity. A killing is a terrible loss, is a terrible incident, and it is something that must be reckoned with, and people must be held to account. But impunity points to a system. Impunity points to institutions that are failing to work on behalf of the citizen of this country. Impunity points to complicity from the bottom to the top of the state apparatus, and this is why impunity must be an absolute priority for the government of Kenya. I would like to write to the government about 2 or 3 serial killers. I call them serial killers because I think cop killers is giving them too much credit. I have felt deeply honored to meet with the human rights defenders working on police killings. I have been in awe with the mothers of victims who have organized, who themselves have become human rights defenders. They know that nothing can bring back their children. Some of the women I met have lost 2 of their sons. But they now fight for justice for others as well, and they want to protect the children of future mothers. So it is the richness of the movement, their professionalism, their commitment, their sophistication in understanding documentation, in understanding the importance of data collection, the importance of evidence, the resilience of those people, mothers, youth, human rights defenders, the fact that they organized in those justice centers, based in the community itself, and are making their work part of the community. I mean, that's incredibly impressive, and it gives me hope. Because when you have people who are prepared to work so hard to combat their own grief, to make the grief, their grief, part of their fight for justice, to organize collectively, to look for accountability, to, some of the mothers go to IPOA offices several times a week in order to monitor the progress on the cases. I mean, with that resilience, that commitment, that understanding of how impunity functions, I feel hopeful that there are people in Kenya who will be able to bring justice and put an end to those absolutely cruel executions by people who should be protecting the community and are in fact killing the community.
55 cases, 100 cases, and we forget that actually we're talking about human life. It's just not cases, it's actually human life. Kenyans lost.
You know, the international community, of course, has always a big role to play. They have a role to play in terms of protection. They have a role to play in terms of ensuring that those that are on the front line, the members of the community, the human rights defenders, are not harmed for the work they are doing on behalf of international human rights. So for me, it is incumbent upon the international community, international NGOs, the United Nations, and the embassies themselves to ensure that those individuals that are fighting for human rights, for the UN Charter, that they are protected. So they must denounce any attacks against human rights defenders. They must go to a police station when human rights defenders are being arbitrarily detained. They must seek official meetings to raise the issue. They must make it clear that this is an issue of central importance to the international community, as it should be an issue of central importance to Kenya, to the political community, to the MPs, to the government, to the legal community. It is only through an international solidarity, through fighting back against the inertia and the complicity that we will be able to attack this regime of impunity that appears to be characterizing the killings of young and not so young men in particular in urban settlements. In the course of this academic visit, my friends and the expert who invited me also and members of the community took me to visit the community. And the urban settlement clearly is a place of extreme poverty. It is a place of extreme neglect. The killings, therefore, come on top of a cycle of violations under international human rights law, access to water, access to housing, access to sanitation. All of those combine to creating an environment that is extremely hard. It is a hard environment. It is hard for people who live here. It is hard not to lose sight of your own humanity in an environment that every day appears to be attacking you because of the poverty, the dirt, the absence of green, the fires that take place, because it's so easy for fires to take hold of those housing. It is remarkable that this environment does not crush people. And I'm sure there are some people who are crushed by such an environment, but those that I've met are not. Those that I've met have found in their environment the seeds for a bigger story. It's a story about humanity, it's a story about our common humanity, and it's a story for social justice.